That's a good one. The regional and the national committees have failed to respond to crises that have occurred in the region. This is the problem, from my perspective, is that the Great Lakes region has not lived a day without war for the last 45 years. Every part of the region has experienced war. Now, the majority, over 85% of the population in the Great Lakes region is below the age of 40. The people we are dealing with in these national committees fall in that age bracket. They have lived, internalized, and have seen war as the solution. Even though they are academicians and they have done businesses, at the end of the day, change in government and improving the conditions that you find unfavorable is explained through violence in these countries. For you to position prevention as a paradigm, as an idea, as an agenda within that history is a mammoth task. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are economists, others are agriculturists, others, they are not trained, they have not studied conflict and prevention and what you and me have studied. They haven't. It's a new language, it's a new vocabulary that you are introducing in the minds of the people we are dealing with. That is one. That is on the larger scale.
I think the reason we have had those places, the particular CAL, Central African Republic, South Sudan, the problem is that it's the failure to understand what the actors, particularly the civil societies, have been telling. We predicted South Sudan was going to go on fire 3 years ago. We alerted the entire process of the ICGLR governments in the regional economic communities like East African Community, and told them if South Sudan's problem of governance, respect of human rights is not attended to now, you are down the road, you are going to get the problem that has happened. So what I'm thinking is that probably one of the things the region and the ICGLR itself doesn't have is the means of early warning, early response, to be able to know that actually this is a failed state. We understand the problems in this country. Every single person would have known what was going to happen in Central African Republic when the LRA went there. Right now we're all thinking Burundi is a country which, if not nipped in the bud, same problems are going to happen. They're arming youth militias. What does that mean? Fortunately, I happen to have done my master's on Burundi, which is titled From Buyoya to Buyoya. And the entire process of how genocides happen in that country are repeating themselves and no one is reacting. And I would think that's the kind of the role that the ICGL must be able to play to make sure that you start tackling, deal with the question of genocide before, try to stop it before. If it's happening, then nip it in the bud. We don't want the aftermath of saying we are taking people to the court, we're doing let's deal with the matter before it bursts out into our faces. So that's what I think the ICGLR is missing as part of this strategy.
The reasons are various. I mean, they range from political to practical, challenges. The practical one being that we do not have money. These committees, they don't have budgets that are available even at national level yet. And if you have no budget, then it becomes very difficult for you to move very fast, to go to areas of the scene, to be able to identify what the problem is, and then you are able to report immediately. That is the big challenge.
Those other programs they are more attractive than genocide prevention to the international community. That is my opinion. The conference on illegal exploitation of natural resources that I attended sometime in Zambia, I think it was 2011, generated almost $3-5 million in terms of commitments to see that there is the protocol against illegal exploitation of natural resources is implemented. But where are those resources? It turned out that the concentration was on the DRC, where there is the gold and diamond and coal and all these other minerals. And big companies and countries where I think the US committed $2 million, Germany came in with money and so on. Okay? It's an attractive area for investment for people who have interests in that. Genocide prevention remains to be packaged and promoted and sold as an equally attractive field worth that kind of investment. It has not reached that level. The same with the sexual gender-based violence. The investment that has gone into there in terms of through the World Bank, IDB, US, and so on, funding that, but of course, again, looking at experiences from the DRC and so on, that has also become very active, and because of that attention and investment. It is critical now to invest as much as possible in capacity building and education about prevention, either of state leaders, members of parliament, they don't know what it is, children at school, university education, academicians need to produce this material. We need, just like the media and everywhere we have flooded the area with news about fighting and death and violence. We need to flood the intellectual space, the learning space in Uganda, either for the leaders or the children, with information about prevention.
It needs training, constant training. So the support we need is continuous. We don't need an event support. We need a continuous, sustainable, meaningful, support, technically, financially, and also we need support in terms of teaming up. We need support in terms of raising also our profile. We also need support in terms of linking with other, capacity building institutions, whether in Canada, whether in Africa. There are so many opportunities. There are so many potentials within here. We would, in fact, if we had the support, we would explode our banks. Every people here, we want to come and work with it. So we need support in terms of designing these programs in line with having a capacity, full body capacity in training, in research, documentation, you see? Yes, so we need, and then also set up a proper resource center for cross learning within the region and beyond. We also need people from Canada, people from the US, from all walks of life, media, tailor-made. We need that capacity in terms also of space. In fact, we are trying to go out to start, getting some support to ensure that we have public engagement, dialogues, training as well. National committee needs to do that. But we also need to identify people who have the potential, in terms of people who can transfer knowledge. We also need the national committee to ensure that there's translation into local languages. There's media engagement. There's writing in the newspapers so that, we are able to stand up to these commitments that we want to deliver to our people in terms of peace and security, in terms of genocide prevention, in terms of war crimes prevention, so that, we will all be able to have a say and a voice.
Training would help, sharing of knowledge, because there was, for example, it was a useful thing that the Oswich Institute did take some of the members of the National Committee. I was one of the people who went to train the Tanzanian National Committee, which was very useful. The answers, the responses that we got from them was that you can gain quite a lot by replicating some of those exchange. It's not expertise or teaching, but it's just exchange of information. There are some people who have better information, better analysis, and they can help the national committees to be able to replicate that. So I would think that collaboration with those institutions, in particular that they had interest in these committees, in the ICGLR and the national committees, should be improved, should be encouraged, and I think it's going to make worthwhile the strength that we require for these national committees to work more effectively.
In terms of the role of international partners, we talked about the need for resources, and we talked about skills and capacity building in the region to help people grow, develop their own capacities and be supported. But again, in addition to that role, there is a need to recognize that prevention has to be local. And international interventions and frameworks that exist need to be tailored to local conditions, or allow the local people to develop frameworks that they can understand, interpret, and apply. That is very critical. I'll give you an experience. I've attended so many conflict resolution programs and conferences, and I've given on issues of prevention of genocide, and I've not had a conversation about the role of traditional leaders discussed as part of a preventive mechanism, be brought into a mechanism to prevent. But you see, in the African societies, these traditional authorities endure as alternative forms of authority. And on many occasions, they challenge the state. And if you do not integrate them, bring them into a conversation about prevention, and you come with models that you think have been tested in other places and therefore it worked there, you'll miss the point. In these communities in Africa, these ones, they are always the fallback position, the fallback force and community. Whenever politicians fall out, there is a tendency to fall back on traditional authorities, on tribal communities. Two, secondly, there is many frameworks I have read about, and I've had a discussion with donors to contribute towards peace building efforts and so on. There is a tendency to think that because when you go to donors, some of them tend to say, we work through government. Okay? At the bottom of all that thinking is citizenship. Okay? We work through government to deal with its citizens. Or we help citizens to become good citizens and work with the government. Those individuals that you see, even the leaders, they also define themselves as tribes. A conversation about prevention needs to know how to mediate between citizenship and the tribe. These are issues that never took place at the time of forming the state in Africa. The biggest failure of state formation in Africa is the failure to manage the tension between those two big, powerful identities, citizenship and the tribe. The failure to manage these two forms of power and influence to complement each other in building stable communities is still lacking. International communities don't have that space. International programs, frameworks don't have that conversation. This is why I'm telling you that prevention has to be local.